for me, the accountability lies within who you're talking to. Different people have different levels of initiative.
Mm-hmm.
In my team, the dealer team, my group of people that flew around the country with me,
Yeah.
um, I had people that all I had to do was just tell them what I wanted it to look like, and then I didn't need to pay any more attention. They'd come to me when it was done.
Yeah.
Some people, tell me when you're done. Other people, do this and don't do any more until you check with me. Let me make sure it's good, and then we'll
Yeah.
move you to the next.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with my very special guest, Tom Orlando. So Tom, you might recognize the last name. Tom is Madison's husband. And so Tom, I met through my daughter, Samantha. And then I met Madison, Tom's wife, through Tom at the same time I met Tom. So I want to thank you, Tom, for that. And then I'm glad to spend time in the room with you. So you are the former owner of, I'm reading it, the dealer team. And I know you went into motorcycle businesses, right? And improved them. So
Yes.
dealerships of motorcycle businesses, yeah, and improved them. And then the other part, which is an interesting combination of the two, but when you think about it, they fit so well. A 30-year trainer of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Covey's content. So I just found it an interesting combination, and one that, based on what you formerly did, it made sense that they fit together. And I know you've charted a new path for yourself, and so you're in the process of doing that. So welcome, and I know you have a quote to start us off with.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Appreciate it. And it's always my pleasure to share my wife with people in professional businesses because she's really great at what she does.
She's awesome. Yeah, she's just got a light. I told my daughter, I said, when I got done with the conversation, I told Madison this too. It's like getting a hug. That's what it was like being in the room with her. So yeah, it was cool. All right.
Yes,
So what's
absolutely.
your quote? And I
So
like it. I hadn't heard it before.
the quote that kind of hits me in my heart, and I've been it's been part of my life for quite some time, is that there's a God-shaped hole in the heart of every man that he tries to fill with all types of matter.
Hmm.
And that kind of hit home for me because I was very familiar with trying to fill that hole with stuff, things, people, you know. Covey, who's the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, really affected my life, so much so that I wrote him. And then he was kind enough to write me back. And then we wound up corresponding for years.
I
And
love it.
he had written a book called Principle Centered Leadership.
Mhm.
And the book originally was called Christ Centered Leadership, but it didn't sell. So then
Oh,
he just changed the name, the word Christ. He changed it to Principles all through the book, and then it sold a couple million copies.
isn't that
And
crazy?
yeah, and part of the 7 habits is to understand what your center is, right? You understand the different roles that you have in life, but you have what's at your center. And whatever's at your center as a human needs to be
Right.
unshakable. It needs to be solid ground. And if you fill it with things or people, then it all relies on how your relationship with that thing or that person is at that time.
Hmm.
So, there's times in my life that I've been money centered. The most
Hmm.
important thing for me was making money. How much money do I have? How much money can I make? How much money can I make for my clients, which makes me more money? So in that case, when you have money and your money's good, you're good. But then when the money gets rocky, everything else gets rocky. So that's why you have to go back to a unshakable core. And for me, that's my higher power that I choose to call God.
Yeah. Um, when did this shift take place? How do you do it? Because I mean, if I'm thinking about as a leader that there's this thing about, I'm going to say human too. There's this thing about the words that describe what you just said, right? Is that I was focused on money before, and now I'm focused on the center, God, if you will, higher power, whatever people refer to it. How does that shift come about? Because it's not this, oh, let me just wake up one day and boom, here it is.
Yeah. So um, my wife and I both studied martial arts for a long time. And in that philosophy of Taoism,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you have Buddhism and Taoism, and basically my best explanation of the difference between the two is Buddhism is more like Catholicism, strict rules, very rigid. Taoism is more like Christianity, where you're kind of like more fluid and have a better
Mm-hmm.
understanding. You can talk directly to the guy instead of having to
Mm-hmm.
go through somebody, you
Yeah.
know. And in there is a saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's kind of what happened with me. I was ready to learn and ready to change. I hit a very everybody hits a bottom, which
Mm-hmm.
makes them turn around,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And for me, that understanding of a bottom is, it's like they talk about going down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I understand it is, you start going down a rabbit hole. Rabbit hole is really tight, and you start going down. You can't turn around. You can't go backwards. You have to go all the way to the bottom of the hole, and then you can turn around and come back out. So that's where my hitting the bottom was. And then I had to learn that if you walk a mile into the woods, you have to walk a mile out of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just turn on a dime,
No,
because
no.
you had a realization, and I had a very severe bottom. I don't know if we talked about my bottom at all.
Well, not your butt, not your hip, but the bottom that you hit. Yes, we did talk about that.
Yeah. So having a very severe bottom, when your life kind of implodes,
Mm-hmm.
right, you have to reorganize and retool and replan.
Right.
So that's where, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have
Mm-hmm.
30 years of sobriety a few months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you for that. And that all happened at that same time. So the it's really funny because I was the captain of my football team, and I made All-Star, New Jersey All-Stars as a high school football player. So I was going to go to college, scholarships, everything. And I busted up my knees, and all of that kind of fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really funny is I had gotten through all that with virtually never reading a book. I made it through.
Wow.
I made it through school basically on my personality, uh,
Yeah.
Cliff Notes, having people help me.
Yeah.
And, I didn't read my first book until I was 34 years old. This is the first book I read from the beginning to the end.
How was that?
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was actually the big book of AA.
Yeah.
That was the first book that I read. The
Wow.
second book was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy read.
No.
Most people that own it never really read it cover to cover.
Yeah.
you know so that had the effect on me because I needed to change. And one of the principles of the 7 habits is that you learn it and then you teach it, that the best way to
Mm-hmm.
learn something is to teach it. So
Yeah.
I started teaching that thing right away. Didn't know what I was doing, but I was teaching it, and that just led to 30 years of teaching it.
Well,
To
and
the
you taught it to kids, didn't you too?
well
I mean,
no
didn't you go into schools at some point? Am
I
I remembering
so
that wrong?
so I I crashed my car in 94.
Right.
My friend and I were both drinking, and my
Right.
friend died, and I went to prison.
And
Okay.
I'm deeply, deeply sorry for that.
That's okay. It's when you mess up, you don't necessarily get to pick your consequences.
Mm-mm.
And the consequences for what I do, I don't even know if I paid enough consequences. The only thing I know from that incident is they had me on suicide watch. At some point, I decided I didn't want to die, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know how to live. And the
Yeah.
only way I knew how to live was the fact that I couldn't make a better past. I had to figure out a way to make a better future, and something I could do to help me live a life
Mm-hmm.
with family and other people, and somehow do something good from that incident. And so
Mm-hmm.
I created a program called Think Before You Drink, and I went to schools and talked to kids about drinking and driving.
There you go.
That's where I spoke to kids.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't talk to him about drinking. I said, listen, if you want to drink, I can't tell you not to drink. People
Right.
drink. I can only tell you that you shouldn't drink and get behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah.
And then I would explain my story. So I did wind up talking to about 12,000 kids in schools at different times. I was on
Wow.
PBS 3 times.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how I healed from that. And
Yeah.
I felt I did something pretty good because I used to get lots of letters from principals and
Yeah.
guidance counselors to say that, there was one school in particular that when I spoke there in May that year, when they had their graduation of the seniors of the high school, was the first year that they've ever had 0 incidences of drinking and driving.
Oh my God, that's
So
huge.
that was a big deal. Yeah, that made me feel I
Wow.
did something. Yeah,
You've
made
done
a
a lot
difference.
of some things, right? It's
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
interesting when you talk, Tom, about it, and it's almost like um there's here's the path, you hit rock bottom, the only place to go is, then you come back up. Not everyone sees that choice or the fact that that's the only choice. Because the thing is we all have choices at every point along, and as I tell my kids, it's all about choices.
Yeah,
You had a choice. I mean, they had you on suicide watch. You had a choice of following the path that they were watching out for, or stepping in and taking control back and going, you know what? This isn't going to be for nothing. And that's powerful stuff. So, and it's not everyone, and it's not every single human that will make those choices. And so that's the kind of thing. It's like in those moments, right? And I've not been at that level. We've all had our stuff that we go through. And maybe not directly impacted, but people that you love. I shared it before on the podcast. My son is in prison. My son is in prison because of choices that he made. And it's a journey to go through when you watch someone you love make really stupid choices. And like I told him, I said, and I'm proud of him because similar to you, Tom, where you got on the Covey and you saw a different purpose and a different path and thought, you know what, by God, I'm going to make a difference and this isn't going to be wasted. And that's my language, not yours. He's doing the same thing. And, not every, inmate has a mom who does leadership development and coaching. But this information he's giving back, and he's giving back to other inmates and changing circumstances. And that's why I tell people, if I know everything about your external environment, I can only predict 10% of your future happiness. Because to your quote, it's an inside job. We have to figure out inside what that hole is and how to fill it. We make choices about not our external environment, but how do we respond to it? And so you responded in a very responsible, by God, this is not going to be for nothing. I'm going to make a difference way, versus it could have gone a completely different route.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, the third book I read was Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
So did not read that. And that's not a light read, by the
No,
way.
well, so it's he. This is I always find this very interesting when I ask people, because in that book, Viktor Frankl is the person who brought about the phrase proactive.
Hmm.
Okay, he was a clinical, I want to say psychiatrist. I'm not sure it was psychiatrist or psychologist
Okay.
in Austria
Okay.
when Hitler happened. His whole family was put into concentration camps
Hmm.
with him. His whole family was killed in the
Right.
concentration camps. He had decided to turn it into a study for him as to why some people were okay and some people were not.
Right.
And that's where he got the word proactive. Proactive is to react to respond based on values and principles as opposed to reacting on emotions.
Interesting.
What the people in there did that were okay as you could
Yeah.
be.
So, I mean, yeah, they're
Yeah,
gonna move
they
forward.
focused on the life that they had.
Hmm.
They realized that this moment was just a moment,
Right.
was going to pass at some point, and they focused on their future where they would get that past back again. So they projected a future that was better.
Right.
They existed in the place that they were in. They learned the difference between freedom and liberty. Liberty, they can take your liberty. They took my liberty.
Yeah.
Right? My liberty was taken away because of what I did. The consequence of my action was to lose my liberty for 5 years, 5.5 years.
Yeah.
But they couldn't take my freedom. My freedom was in my head, knowing that I had the freedom to respond in the way that I wanted to for what I was going through.
Right.
So I turned it into the best possible scenario. And understand, like, I'm not here to, to play my violin, because I certainly deserved what happened because of what I did. There's no way you can ever make that up. I do the best I can to be okay, to get through the days.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I stopped going and talking to kids and doing that was because I did it so many times it became mechanical. Like even right now, I mentioned what I did and I didn't burst into tears, but also just last night, I was at a meeting talking about my story and I went through this whole thing and I was crying like a baby last night.
Yeah.
I felt I needed to move on.
Yeah.
I needed to move past it.
Yeah.
But while I was incarcerated, I used that Viktor Frankl philosophy to be okay in there. This is really funny. I watched The Shawshank Redemption about 15 times.
Really?
Yeah, because I never knew anyone that ever went to prison. I had no idea.
Yeah, I hadn't known anyone who's gone to prison either. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Right? And so now here I am. I'm a pretty big guy. So I think I'm going to be okay. Right. But it's still an experience I have no idea about. So I started going to AA meetings in bad parts of town so I could meet people that had been to prison. And I would talk to them. And I learned that in New Jersey, where I'm from, they do not have a vehicular homicide. They only have manslaughter. And because my friend and I were both very drunk that night, they were charging me with aggravated manslaughter, which carries a term of 30 years.
Oh, geez.
So, I was trying to deal with the fact that if I go, when I go, I could go for 30 years.
Yeah.
And if I went for 30 years, I mean, my parents would be dead. My daughter would be grown. My wife would be alive. My business, at the time I had my business, I had 50 employees.
Yeah.
And I had a motorcycle dealership.
Yeah.
I went away.
Yeah.
So anyway, while I was in there is where I developed that program. I started teaching the 7 habits to inmates.
Yeah.
I got permission from the warden to put together a program to teach. I got Covey's permission to do it while I was in there. I asked the warden to let me out of the prison so I could go do a scared straight thing with the kids about driving. And he said, he looked at me like I had 2 heads. He said, "What, you're nuts? You can't do that." And
like, why not?
So I just kept writing letters. I just kept writing letters. So eventually, Christy Whitman, the governor at the time of New Jersey, responded to me. And she told the warden to make arrangements to let me get out for a day and go talk to kids.
Yeah.
So I did that. And I would leave like once a week or once every other week. And I'd go to a school and I would go talk to kids and then they would take me back to prison.
Wow. You had day truck.
So, and then eventually, so real quick, part of the story that you need to understand is that while I was in prison, before I went away, my store, my motorcycle dealership, was in the top 1% of the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. So, 1,300, 1,400 motorcycle dealers, and I was in the top 13. So we did really well. I was very blessed. I was really good at what I did.
Yeah.
When I screwed up and then went away, I said I had learned the 7 habits. I taught the 7 habits to my team. I never drank much, but when I drank stupid.
Yeah.
So getting into AA, stopped drinking before it took 1.5 years to go.
Wow.
So during that time, I tried to make my business as solid as it could be while I was away.
Right.
I told my 5 managers that none of them could do my job, but they could each do 1/5 of my job.
Right.
So I'll teach each of you 1/5 of my job, and I will take 1/5 of my salary and put it in a bank account for you until I come home.
Right.
When I come home, you can have the money.
Right.
If you leave before I come home, your money goes to the other four.
Okay.
And then if one of those people leave, it goes to the other three. So that's
Yeah.
how I kept my business okay while I was gone.
Yeah. You incentivize.
However, while I was gone, I was called to the social worker's office one day, and it was my father on the phone, crying like
Hmm.
a baby,
Oh.
saying that my store burned down.
Oh.
It was a freak accident, electrical fire in the basement, and everyone was devastated, and nobody knew what to do. So I told them, I said, listen, when the dust settles, there should be something left,
Yeah.
right? If I did this when I was a 27-year-old knucklehead, I can do it when I get home. So
Yeah.
I told my parents, I said, just take care of my wife and my daughter,
Right.
and take care of yourselves. And when I come home, I'll do something else.
Yeah.
They felt that since I was incarcerated, I wasn't thinking clearly, that I was letting too much go.
Yeah.
So my parents and my managers tried to rebuild my business,
Oh, geez.
and they failed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I came when I was released to my wife had moved to Florida with my daughter.
Right.
My business was gone.
Right.
Um, I had to file bankruptcy. I had nothing. I was renting a room in someone's house,
Hmm.
and I had a bicycle because they took my driver's license for 2 years, which
Yeah.
didn't start till I got home. So
Right.
I was riding my bicycle on the streets,
In
trying to
New
figure out
Jersey.
what do I do next.
In New Jersey. Through the winter?
Well, it was yeah, because it was January. It was January. So anyway, I went into the health and wellness industry because I was in pretty good shape,
Yeah.
and I actually studied anatomy and physiology during that time. So I went to the health and wellness industry, did it for a little while, decided I didn't love it. During this
Hmm.
time, my friends from the motorcycle industry would call me, the ones that
Yeah.
remained friends for me over the 5 years.
Yeah.
And once I was home, they were like, hey, could you come and help us with our sales department? Could you come and help us with my finance department? Can you tell me how you did this? And I would go to my parole officer, get commission to leave New Jersey,
Yeah.
get on a plane, and I would go help them. And I did this for a few months. And one of my buddies one day said, you could probably charge people for this stuff. So I
Hmm.
started a consulting company and did that for the last 18 years.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So
So
that's what I've been doing.
when I think about stuff like that, because you've gone, it's literally this phoenix that rises from the ashes, right?
Yes,
On stuff
many
that happened.
times.
Yeah. Um, so how do you know? It's like this next thing, you're on your next chapter. I know you made the decision to walk away from the consulting that you were doing.
Mhm.
Um, what prompts those decisions, Tom? What prompted that decision and to say, hey, it's time, right?
So I'm very blessed in the fact that I don't feel like I've really worked my entire life.
Yeah.
I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed since I'm 23 years old, and I'm
Wow.
62. Yeah, 62. Um,
You're not sure.
wait, I'm 64.
You're
I'm
like, how
64.
old am I?
Yeah, I never really think about it. But so I've been self-employed since I'm 23 years old.
Wow.
And I've always just done what I've been good at, and if you're good at something, then you enjoy it, and then it's really not like working.
Yeah.
And what I've always loved since the turnaround in my life, I call that my turn, right? That's the
Yeah.
turn in my life.
I like
Since
it.
that turn,
Yeah.
um, I've just really loved sharing the 7 habits. Part of AA is to share your experience, strength, and hope,
Yeah.
which is what I've been doing. And I can go into a motorcycle dealership and I can kind of sum it up pretty quickly. And I
Hmm.
can tell them, hey, listen, this is where you are. This is where I think I can help you get to. This is what we got to do to get there. And I'll bring my team in, and you don't have to pay us until we make results. And when we make results, I get half the increase, and that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved doing that, but it involved flying all the time,
Mm-hmm.
traveling,
Yep.
having jobs, having projects in Michigan, having projects in Texas, having projects,
Mm-hmm.
And one day I just called my wife. I was standing in a parking lot and I said, "Hon, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't get on another plane. I can't spend another week somewhere else." Because what we did involved a lot of FaceTime.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it over the internet.
Yeah.
I needed to stand on the showroom floor with them, show them how to do it, get them to trust me, get them to
Mm-hmm.
change the way they've been doing it.
Yep.
And so then that was about 6 or 7 years ago. I kind of morphed it into, let me just come take your dealership over for 2 years. So at least my wife and I could go somewhere for 2 years and I just
Oh,
fix
okay.
it and hand it back to them.
Yeah.
So I did that. We got a chance to live in Boston, in Chicago, in Dallas. And that brought me here to Ohio.
Right.
I was actually going to retire during COVID,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, and I don't know how to retire. I don't know what that looks
Well, I
like.
was gonna say I can't, and I can't imagine Madison retiring. I mean,
No, no, no.
retirement of the traditional sense of it, to where, right, I'm no longer accountable, responsible, having to go do whatever, because where you get that's your passion too,
Right.
is the
That's what
helping and
exactly. That
yeah.
is a purpose driven life.
Yes.
Yeah. So I realized, well, I'm probably not going to do that. And then
Yeah.
one of
Nice
my
fleeting thought, but
yeah,
that's not a path for me.
one of my clients that became one of my because all my clients became my really good friends.
Yeah.
Because I stood, their businesses are their babies.
Yeah.
And for somebody to give you
Trust.
their baby
Yes.
and let you take care of the baby for a while and then trust you to hand it back to them in better shape than they gave it to you,
Yeah.
that's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
So my friend called me, asked me if I'd come out here to Ohio and help him with the store that he had here and help him get a couple more, and they just wanted to grow. And so I did that. And I've been in the one place for a few years
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that what I've really loved about doing the turnarounds is really helping people to increase the quality of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I've done. You
Yeah.
know, I go you go into a motorcycle dealership and there's salespeople that are in the business because they're enthusiasts. They love
Yeah.
motorcycling.
Yeah.
And I walk in and I talk to somebody who's been riding bikes for 30 years. I'm like, "What kind of bike do you have?" And he says, "I don't have a bike now." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't have a bike now?" He says, "Well, I don't make enough money to keep my bike. I had to sell my bike." I'm like,
Oh, wow.
that's insane.
Yeah.
Now you're standing on a showroom floor selling motorcycles to other people, kind of resenting them because they have a motorcycle and you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. They can actually, they've made a decision to support buying it, whether they can afford it or not.
Yeah. So, if I said to the dealer principal, the problem with your business is you. The
Mhm.
problem with your business is the culture. If you fix you and fix the culture, the business will just get fixed. If I
Mhm.
said that to them, they would look at me like I had two heads and chasing
Yep.
me.
Yep.
But if I told them I can work on your sales processes and increase your profits, and you only have to pay me out of the increase of the profits, they welcome me. Then
Mhm.
once I get there, I start doing 7 habit stuff. I start working on leadership. I start
Yep.
working on culture. When the owner turns to me and says, "I think I might be part of the problem." I'm like, "That's a really good point."
What a great insight. What a great insight.
Yeah, good for you. Maybe I can help you with that. So I decided that in the 20 years that I have left of doing what I do,
Yeah.
I don't want to spend so much time fixing financial portions of the business. I
Mhm.
want to work more and just focus on helping people increase the quality of their lives.
Mhm.
And so I'll do that through leadership.
Yep.
But for me, leadership is not who's the boss in charge of the company, right? Leadership, first of all, leadership and management starts with self leadership
Yep.
and self management,
Mhm.
right? You work on making you a better you,
Mhm.
then you can inspire others to be better.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm focusing. I joined John Maxwell team, so I'm getting
You
certified with
did.
John Maxwell. So that increases my ability because I've morphed my 7 habit training into things I learned from Tony Robbins,
Yep.
from Jim Collins, anybody where I could gather information from,
Yep.
just to add to that, because leadership for me is vision,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Leadership is vision and management is doing.
Yeah.
So you need both,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you need to make sure that every step that you're taking along the way is congruent with where you're going. So that's really where I want to focus my time now, right
Yeah.
in there. Let
I
people know.
love,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead. No, I love that focus. I love the fact that, and it's so funny. It's for you meet and you meet people where they're at. And if you walk into a dealership, and to your point, and it's just it could be a construction site, it could be whatever, right? You walk into to that environment, if you will. And if you were to start off by going, let's bring in Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we're going to work, and literally they're going to go, get out of here.
Yeah.
You don't even know
Uh,
what you're talking about. But and because I've coached people that are in very physical, manual construction type businesses, leaders, and you do have those conversations to create awareness with people so that they can start engaging with people differently. And it's at all levels, leadership, all industries, right? It's all the same stuff. And what's cool is, yes, we start with us. And we start with us, and then we start creating different experiences for the people around us, and then they start showing up differently. Cy Wakeman is another name. I don't know if you're familiar with her stuff. I ran across her at CY Wakeman. I ran across her. What stood out for me is she talks about a lot of organizations go after engagement. So you talk about the people part of it. You talk about salespeople. How are you motivating them? Whatever it is, right? She said what we need to do is, if we go after engagement without accountability, we have entitlement. So people are sitting back waiting for you to, they expect that they get this stuff. When
mhm.
we develop and nurture and create accountability, right? Accountable people are engaged. And it's not about, as a leader, going, you know what? I have to hold my people accountable. That's not accountability culture. But it's about people owning what's going on. And in order for them to own what's going on, they have to have a voice in it. It can't be a top-down initiative. So as a leader, how do I show up differently to create that condition? So it's
Mhm.
all the stuff that you're talking about, and I freaking love it.
That what you're talking about there for me, that's stewardship delegation, right?
Okay.
Because stewardship is ownership,
Yes.
right? So how do you develop the ownership while delegating to someone? So there's pieces of that. There's you need to be a clear picture of the desired result.
Mm-hmm.
So a clear picture of the desired result is, I want you to paint the wall. Well, here, this is a well-painted wall. Okay. This is a this is what a
This is
good
what it looks
well-painted
like.
wall looks like. Okay. See this wall over here? That's not a good painted wall. Right. And then you have methods, right? It's best to delegate results than methods. The
Mm-hmm.
more methods you delegate, then the less ownership they have.
It's
If
called
I give you
micromanagement.
Yeah, exactly. If I give you all the steps to do it and then it fails, whose fault is it? My
Yeah.
fault,
Yeah.
right? And then when you talk about the accountability, for me, the accountability lies within who you're talking to. Different people have different levels of initiative.
Mm-hmm.
In my team, the dealer team, my group of people that flew around the country with me,
Yeah.
um, I had people that all I had to do was just tell them what I wanted it to look like, and then I didn't need to pay any more attention. They'd come to me when it was done.
Yeah.
Some people, tell me when you're done. Other people, do this and don't do any more until you check with me. Let me make sure it's good, and then we'll
Yeah.
move you to the next.
Yeah.
Right? Oh God, somebody told me this one time. They said you look at people's sense of initiative and competency, the levels
Yes.
of competency. You
Yes.
are you are consciously competent,
Yes.
right? You're consciously incompetent, means you know that you don't know,
Yeah.
right? Then you become consciously competent, which is that you can, right? At the
Yeah.
beginning, you're like unconsciously incompetent because you don't even know that you don't know.
Don't even know that you're screwing up. Yeah, it's those
Yeah.
levels and those degrees. And it's interesting because at the end, you do become unconsciously competent, which
Yes.
means you're just doing it and don't realize it because you're not having to focus your every movement on it. It's the same thing of driving a stick shift car. In the beginning, when you're driving a stick shift car, you got to think about every single little thing that you do.
Yeah. And later on, you
And
can
then
just
at some
go.
point, it's an extension of your body, right? That you're not focused on it. So breathing, it's all that stuff the same
Yeah.
way.
It's LeBron James telling somebody, like watching somebody go, yeah, you just need to stay in the air longer. If you just stay in the air longer, you'll be
yeah,
fine.
it's all going to be good.
Yeah.
It's all going to
Yeah.
be good.
Jump higher
Um,
and stay in the air longer.
I freaking love this time with you, and we could easily spend hours talking, but we're
Sure.
not going to do that this time.
Mhm.
But I really, really want, and invite you to come back whenever you're ready, because I want to hear how everything's going, because I'm sure you're just going to knock it out. I also am John Maxwell certified. Love the team, the environment, the vibe, the grounding in, spirituality, religion. I think it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing.
At the end
Cool
of the day,
community.
for me, all of these things are tools.
Yeah.
They're all just tools. And
Yeah.
like a hammer, right? Hammer just sits in a bag. And if I pick up a hammer, I can use it to break things.
Yeah.
And if my buddy picks up a hammer, he can build beautiful things. Right? It depends on how you skill yourself with the
I was
tool.
going to say the competency comes into it.
Yeah. And I am a firm believer that, you know, we co-create our life. I
Hmm.
believe. You know, if I do everything I can within my power to make A happen, and
Hmm.
no matter what I do, B happens, that's where I just got to sit back and say, you know what? It's not my will. That's the
No.
way it's going. And I just got to accept that. Let me learn why that is and let me
Hmm.
move with that.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what makes my life okay. And so right now, making the decision to move from, like when I went from owning the business to owning a consulting business, which is where I'm
Hmm.
helping other people with their business.
Hmm.
Now I'm at the place where I want to help people more with their life. When I would be in the dealership and all the salespeople are getting to know me as the sales guru, right?
Right.
And now all of a sudden I'm going to bring in leadership management training. Most of them don't want to go. They're
Yeah.
going because now they know they have to because I have some clout in the store and I
Yeah.
tell them this is the
Yeah.
next step.
Yeah.
They kind of trust me. They get in the room and I usually do 3 full days
Hmm.
with the teams. And by sometime during the first day, before the end of the day or at the end of the day, they're looking at me going, I had no idea we were going to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
I really like this stuff,
Uh-huh.
and then making that difference in people's lives for
Hmm.
me has been at least as rewarding as changing the business
Hmm.
because it just feels so personal.
Hmm.
But I also remember my father's cousin when I was young. He was like kind of the mentor to the families because he was the
Yeah.
most successful.
Yeah.
And he looked at me one time when I was a teenager and he says, listen, you're getting older. You just got to realize one thing about life and marriage and living with a family. He said, if money don't come in the front door, love goes out the window.
Oh.
So at the end of the day, I knew in the businesses, no matter how good I made people feel inside the store, if it wasn't profitable, it didn't make sense. Somebody said, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It's
So,
funny.
it's just there's all the different areas of our life. Money and wealth is just one of them,
Yeah.
but it is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Gandhi said that no one man can excel in any one area of his life while completely ignoring another.
Bingo.
So that's where the
The
balance comes in.
coaching has the wheel of life that you do assessments around all those different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love is that it's shaped in a circle, but when you assess the values, you've got this spider diagram, which when you connect each of these dots around it, make an interesting shaped wheel.
Yes. Yeah.
because you're not so high in some areas of life that you are in others. And so it is a good visual for people to realize, okay, that's why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. I'm literally going through life on this wheel that's got a few flat sides, so it's like clunky. Yeah. So Tom, what are one or two
Yes.
things that you would love people to walk away with? I love, love, love this time in the room with you. What comes on
Okay.
mind for you?
To walk away with. Well, first of all, for me, I do believe that I believe in a principle-centered leadership. I believe in I was told that there's universal truths,
Hmm.
right? A universal truth is that honesty is the best policy, right? And that is true. People can get away with not being honest for a short period of time,
Hmm.
but you cannot forever do that because it has a consequence to it.
Hmm.
And universal truths, you can't break them. You can only break yourself against them.
I have to think about that. You can't break them.
They're like pillars.
Okay, so you could breaking yourself against them means that you don't comply with them.
Right.
You're
You don't
going
comply.
against
You keep trying
them,
to
but
break. You keep
they're
trying to
there
break it.
anyway. I gotcha. I
It's
gotcha.
true no matter what you do. It's
Yes,
still
yes,
true. Right?
yes,
North is true north.
yes.
So for me, it's doing the right thing, doing the next right thing for everyone involved. That's important to me. That's what I teach in the businesses. Doing the next right thing is not just doing the right thing for the customer, but also
Mm-hmm.
doing the right thing for the owner, doing the right thing
Mm-hmm.
for the worker, doing the
Mm-hmm.
right thing for your manager, the
Mm-hmm.
frontline people. What's the best next thing for everyone involved? Because if I just do what's right for the customer, we're going to go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just do what's right for the boss, we're going to lose customers and go out of
Yeah,
business.
yeah,
So it's balancing that. For me, doing the next right thing is a very important principle. And then, that's all just based on having honesty and good morals.
yeah. It's interesting when you say doing the next right thing and to balance that stuff. Balancing that stuff is looking at it to look and make sure that they're not negatively impacted or hurt, right? Because it may
Yes,
not move someone forward, but are they losing a lot of stuff and negatively impacted to a point that's not okay? And there's a finesse to that. But it is this, you're cognizant or the intention that that's how you're going to move forward. I'm looking at all this stuff. This is how, to your point, guiding principles. It could be, founding things that you do, but you move an organization forward when you're really explicit about what those things are and not just leave them as assumptions.
true.
I agree. Yeah. Um, Thank you. We could chat for a long time. And I appreciate just you sharing what you've shared, your leadership journey, I'm excited for the stuff that you've got, coming up. And I agree with you is that all this knowledge that we have, because there are tools in our tool belt. And that's why I don't lead with tools. I take a look at the scenario and what's going on, and then they come in based on what the room needs or what the human needs or whatever that looks like. But it's so cool to have those tools.
Oh, yeah. And you need them.
Yeah, yeah,
You absolutely need them. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And I agree with you. You have to understand the human component first.
yeah,
And then you can otherwise you're a doctor just prescribing drugs.
yeah, yeah.
Really, it
We're
didn't
going to
work for
treat the
everybody. You just
symptom.
take
Yeah,
this.
we're going to treat the symptom.
You
Yeah,
need a proper diagnosis first.
yeah. No, I totally agree. Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
oh, yeah. So this has been Leadership Sound Bites. Please like, share, subscribe. On behalf of myself and Tom, hope to see you again. Have a freaking awesome day.